In a world brimming with complexity, few creatures embody harmony like the honeybee. With tireless precision, she dances from bloom to bloom, each motion guided by millennia upon millennia of instinct, each act in service to the whole. And then there are the beekeepers, watchful stewards of this ancient symbiosis. Part agri-scientist, part poet, they move along their hives with the efficiency of Mo, Larry, and Curly, tending to the bees' needs as best they can comprehend, and with the infrequency of a waterfall in the Sahara, sometimes running off, flapping and flailing like a penguin on a hot sidewalk. This is their journey.
Welcome to Bee Love Beekeeping, presented by our good friends and partners in beekeeping, Man Lake. Our guest today is not only one of the world's leading authorities on honeybees, he is super entertaining. National Geographic Explorer Dr. Sammy Ramsey is going to be here with us. We'll discuss his role in producing the new series, Secrets of the Bees, how they got that amazing footage inside the hive, and what it was like to work with James Cameron. Plus, I'll pick his brain on Varroa testing, mites, and of course, his wild and crazy beekeeping story. Hint, it involves an emergency room visit. That's all coming up, but first, let's take 2 minutes to go inside the hive, this feature presented by Primal Bee. If you've ever cracked open a hive and found everything glued together with sticky golden brown gunk, you've met propolis. Beekeepers call it bee glue because it makes inspections feel like a wrestling match sometimes. Bees make propolis by collecting resin from tree buds and bark. They mix it together with wax and enzymes. They use it to seal cracks, smooth out rough surfaces, and shrink the entrance to something easier to defend. The interesting thing is that propolis kills bacteria and fungi. Bees coat the inside of their nest with it, building what scientists call a propolis envelope. The whole interior can get covered with a layer of this natural disinfectant. Research shows that colonies with heavier propolis envelopes have lower disease loads. The bees don't have to fight off infections as hard individually because their living space is doing some of the immune work for them. Wild colonies living inside tree cavities tend to have way more propolis than colonies in standard hives. The rough bark in the inside of that tree cavity gives bees something to coat, as compared to smooth wooden boxes that don't trigger as much of the same response. So remember, next time you're scraping propolis off your frames, you're looking at your bees' attempt to keep themselves healthy. I'd like to welcome today our super very special guest to the show. This is Dr. Samuel Ramsey. Dr. Sammy, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderfully today. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It is so good to meet you finally. This whole thing has come together because of Secrets of the Bees. Now streaming on Disney Plus and Hulu, by the way. And it is fantastic. And I just wanted to talk to you to see what it was like being involved with it. So thanks again for coming on.
Oh, I'm delighted to get to come here and talk about my favorite things, bees and this documentary that I've had the opportunity to get to be a part of in so many different ways on it.
I mentioned it on the show last week, and this is before you and I even had this interview set up. And I mentioned that one of the really cool things is for beekeepers is to be able to get a view inside the hive and see things that most of us have never seen. Could you tell us what some of those things were and how they got some of those shots?
This is one of my favorite questions to answer because I'm certain that it's precisely what I would be thinking if I watched this documentary and wasn't a part of making this documentary. Because I've seen things before where my first question was, how did they get a shot like that? But this documentary, I mean, most documentaries, maybe I'll think that once or twice. Throughout this documentary, every time I saw a shot, I thought, man, if they didn't see the behind the scenes of it the way that I did, they would have to have no idea how we got into the colony in that way and got that shot, how we were able to actually see the different mouth parts of the bee going through the honey and parting it aside and creating this meniscus so it can drink the very viscous honey. Or like when the two bees' tongues are touching and they're exchanging fluid between, like, there's just so much cool stuff. I love this this very specific shot where we set up a camera in front of a set of flowers that only bumblebees are really capable of pollinating effectively. And these flowers, through buzz pollination, the bees are able to grab on to the anther of the flower, the part that produces the pollen. But the flower really holds on tightly to the pollen. And so unless you vibrate it at the right frequency, it won't release the load of pollen. And so these bumblebees just jackhammer up against the flower, which was really cool. But then when the bee actually backed away from the flower and released some of the nectar from its mouth parts and then spread it past it while flying between its legs all the way to its back legs so they could squeeze it onto the pollen so the pollen wouldn't blow away in flight. That was something that we weren't originally setting out to capture when we did. And man, oh man, did their patience pay off from watching all of these flowers trying to get amazing shots of buzz pollination to seeing something that's literally never been caught on camera before. And it was caught using these very high-speed cameras with a videographer very patiently waiting there, adjusting focus, trying to get everything in frame. And some of it was a little magic and a little luck, but it is one of the coolest visuals of the entire documentary.
There's a bunch of them that are really cool, but yeah. And you got to work with James Cameron?
Yes.
Seriously? You can drop his name for the whole rest of your life now.
I'm looking forward to it. It's one of those moments where, I mean, I'm a science communicator. I love talking about science, but having the opportunity to break into a world of science communication that's very different from what I've done before was really exciting. So getting to jump into being a documentarian in some ways. But to have that very first foray be with Disney Nat Geo and James Cameron is just bonkers. And I understand that it's bonkers, and I will not deny it even for a moment.
It's all downhill from here, I'm sorry to tell you.
I've been told that several times now.
So, from other people as rude as me. Okay, so how were you involved with, like, were you involved in some of the scripting and consulting? Bertie is the guy on camera, and he's doing the talking, but I have a feeling you know a little bit more about bees than he does.
That's possible. So as a producer for Secrets of the Bees, I got to be involved in so many different aspects of bringing all this together because as a producer, you're looking into the creative elements of this and trying to figure out how do we make all of this come together. And so for a documentary like this, where there's so many moving parts, you kind of end up with your hands in a little bit of everything. Consulting, talking through the different aspects of what's going on here. I even ended up doing some of the vocals for the documentary. It's been an absolutely wild ride, start to finish. But when I say that getting to do something like this, I mean, it's truly been incredible. So a place where they really wanted my help consistently was making sure that everything that is said on screen, whether it's by Bertie, me, anybody else, that it is entirely scientifically accurate. And so there's a lot of moving parts there because I have to make sure, okay, that's accurate, but the way that it's said could be misconstrued this way. Maybe we say it this way. Maybe we frame it that way. So there was a lot of that going on, and I probably got on their nerves a bit because as a scientist, I am constantly looking at this from angles that literally no one else is going to interpret it the way that I'm thinking of it. And so there's been a lot there, but they seem to really appreciate that aspect of my skill set. But then also getting a chance to even be a part of the music. David Mitchum is an incredible composer, and he wanted to pull me into some of the vocals. And so you can hear my harmonies in the background, my oohs and ahs and swells and runs here and there. And it's really been quite exciting. And finally, just getting to talk through with everyone what we can show on screen. Because as a scientist, I've seen a lot of amazing things happen with bees in the lab, but it's because we've got incredible equipment and amazing microscopes, and there are things that I feel like other people just don't get a chance to get to see. And I really wanted the rest of the world to see bees from the vantage points that I do. So getting to talk to our incredible videographers, like Alistair McEwen, who unfortunately is no longer with us, but finished out the documentary, and it is dedicated to him, that this entire documentary experience, because of how much work he invested in it. It was their incredible ideas to use things like endoscopy cameras, like literally the ones that, if you go to a gastroenterologist and they go up the like those endoscopy cameras.
Is that what they put in the hive to get some of those shots? And I was also thinking you've got to have lights in there too, which the endoscopy cameras probably do.
Oh yeah.
Wow. So you were involved in the music too. I'm going to have to go back and watch it again now and listen for your woo-woos in the background.
I made my parents do that too.
Give us 20 seconds of your credentials. PhD entomologist, keep going from there.
PhD entomologist. I was a visiting researcher in Thailand for about a year and a half. National Geographic Wayfinder, as well as an NG33 fellow, which is really exciting. They choose 33 visionaries that they feel like are changing the world. I was also part of the 50 people changing the world through the Explorers Club. And so it's just been a really exciting journey as a scientist, because I've been running around for a long time talking about insects, preaching the gospel of bugs. I was literally 7 when I told my family that I wanted to be an entomologist when I grew up. And a lot of that time I've been thought of as a weird guy, like, what are you doing? And so it's been pretty exciting to see people recognizing what I'm doing the way that they are. What used to be something considered odd or weird is now something that's being celebrated, and it means so much to me.
You're doing research, you're teaching, you've got social media, you've got the Nat Geo gig. You've been on CBS Morning News. I just saw you on the cover of Bee Culture magazine, NPR, and you're a singer. Do you have time to breathe? Do you have time to actually get out and enjoy some bees yourself?
I do have time to breathe sometimes, but not as much of it as I wish that I had. Oh my goodness. I've spent so much of my time running around in different countries, working with my students. That takes up a lot of my time, because I love the idea that I get to mold the minds of researchers who are going to be incredible in their own right at understanding bees and changing the world themselves. So it's been quite the experience out here working on all of these different things, but I have to take some time to myself or the world will slow me down. So yesterday I was out hiking in less than efficient footwear and broke my foot. And so I am actually sitting up here doing this podcast with my foot up in a cast and everything, and my friends have been telling me that this is the world's way of telling me to slow down a bit, because I'm doing way too much.
And you're in Boulder, Colorado?
Boulder, Colorado, University of Colorado, Boulder.
Hiking around those beautiful mountains there.
Gorgeous place.
I did some of that myself on our side of the mountains. I'm over on the Utah side of the mountains from you.
Mm-hmm.
I did some of that just today, and thank goodness didn't break anything. As long as we've got a PhD dude here, I want to learn some things from you, okay?
Yeah. What's up?
So you're overseas studying things like Tropilaelaps. And I've told some guests on the show, we don't even talk about the T word on this show. But as long as you're here, what are we going to do with these tropy mites? How are we going to keep them from getting here? And how are we going to get rid of the suckers once they do? Because I don't know that we keep them gone forever.
You're asking a lot of good questions. A lot of good questions. It is my goal, and you know what? Let's put this on record. It is my goal as the principal investigator of the Boulder Bee Lab to make sure that I find a way for us to effectively manage Varroa such that it is no longer the looming threat that it has been for so long. And my hope is that any system that I develop here to manage Varroa can also be ported over for management of trophy mites, because they are the next wicked brood mite on the horizon. And I'm very concerned about what they are capable of doing. It is abundantly clear that we do not understand them to the extent that we need to understand them in order to effectively control them. We just don't know nearly enough about them. We are doing the same thing that we did for Varroa. We waited for Varroa mites to arrive in the US before we started studying them. And as a result, there were so many aspects of the Varroa mite's life cycle and behavior that we didn't understand, that we didn't have all the details for because we didn't do the work. Well, we're doing something similar with Tropy. The vast majority of the research about trophy mites is occurring in a lot of different parts of the world now, but there's just not a lot of controls on how some of this research is coming out. Some of the things that are being said haven't been verified, and it's just become a really confusing space because there's a lot that's been printed about tropy that doesn't seem to comport with the reality of tropy. And I'll give you an example.
I admit a pet peeve of mine is that it seems all beehives are white. Yeah, boring old white. And just when I get a pet peeve, Man Lake comes to the rescue with their new color collection. The vibrant new line of colorful beekeeping hive kits designed to turn your backyard into a buzzing work of art. Each kit comes completely assembled, ready to add to your bee yard, but with a big splash of personality. We're talking dandelion yellow, garden green, coneflower blue, and even bold wild rose pink. Because who says a beehive has to be plain old boring white? Imagine stepping into your bee yard and seeing a rainbow of thriving hives, each one buzzing with life, producing golden homegrown honey. And right now, Man Lake is offering podcast listeners 10% off color collection hive kits. Visit manlakeltd.com and use the code SHOWMETHECOLOR at checkout. That's manlakeltd.com, discount code SHOWMETHECOLOR. Strong colonies fight mites better. They groom more, they remove infected brood, they bounce back faster. But all of that takes energy. Primal beehives reduce thermal stress so your bees have more in the tank when it matters. If you want to give Primal beehives a try, I've arranged a 10% discount just for Bee Love listeners. Click on over to primalbee.com/beelove and use discount code BeeLove at checkout. That's primalbee.com/beelove and use code BeeLove at checkout.
Trophy mites were considered not to be something that we needed to worry about in the U.S. And one of the reasons for that is because they don't seem to be able to survive in a temperate environment. They don't seem to be able to deal with the winter. Any period of time where the bees are not producing brood, trophy mites are supposed to be dead within 48 hours because they can only feed on brood and they can't live longer than that without a meal. Well, that left us with the impression that they would never be able to cross the ocean because we're not going to bring entire colonies across the ocean. And so we should be fine, right? Well, there's that very strange happening last year where a boat that was on its way from South Asia to the east coast of the United States had a swarm of honeybees on the mast of the ship. And in that swarm of honeybees, there were quite a few trophy mites that were alive almost 2 weeks after this ship had set sail. No access to brood. And so their capacity to either feed on adult bees or to somehow manage their metabolism and slow it down in such a way that they can travel long distances is something that we were not ready for because some of the information that's available to us is simply inaccurate. And we have to do a better job of making sure that we are involved in some of the research that's going on so that we can better understand these creatures and make sure that we are managing the scientific integrity of some of these questions being asked and these studies being conducted.
Help us be ready so that once they hit, we've got a plan in place.
That is the goal.
I don't want to be caught like Australia was when Varroa hit. For those that don't know, and no offense, I love our friends in Australia. We have a lot of listeners down there, but there was panic and burning hundreds of thousands of hives. And hopefully we're going to be better prepared than that. But a minute ago, you also mentioned being on top of Varroa.
Hmm.
So give us a few insights there.
Okay, so Varroa mites are weird little parasites. They attach themselves to the underside of bees, and they liquefy a very important organ, the fat body in the bees, which is the bee's liver. And if you think about the wonderful things that your liver does for you, it's really important that you continue to have one. It detoxifies toxic things that get into your body, like alcohol, but tons of other toxic things that get into your body. It's also an important site of the synthesis of proteins in your body that are important for making you, because most of you is made of protein. So the liver is really important. And when these mites feed on bees, they are, unfortunately, really dampening the bee's ability to deal with all kinds of stress from toxic chemicals like pesticides, stress from just aging and their ability to repair the damage that happens to your body as you age. You need proteins for that. Additionally, they are a huge issue for the bee's immune system because the proteins that protect the bees from infection, the antimicrobial peptides, are made by the fat body, by the bee's liver. And so when these mites feed on the bees, there's this double whammy of them knocking out so many of the systems that are important for the bees, but also injecting viruses into the bee's body. And even by feeding, they allow for the entry of bacteria that isn't directly vectored, but still a huge problem for the bees because their immune system has been so severely dampened. And so you end up in a context where the bees are just really sick as a result of these mites. And then we have the chemicals that they're exposed to in the environment, which are now much more dangerous to them. And then we have the viruses and everything else that are a huge problem for them as well. So these mites, they are the linchpin for so many problems that our bees are dealing with. And if we don't get a handle on the mites, I dare say we are never truly going to get a handle on maintaining good honeybee health.
Amen to all that. Okay, I get to ask you something controversial now. Get ready.
Ooh, okay. What's up?
All right. Because lots of things in beekeeping are controversial for some reason. One of the things I love about beekeeping is the old joke about ask 10 beekeepers. Yeah, okay,
I
I won't
do.
even get into that. When I started beekeeping, I was taught about the sugar roll test to test for Varroa. And the last few years, all the really smart people have been telling me, you have to do an alcohol wash. It's much more accurate, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And I'm watching Secrets of the Bees. And what is Dr. Sammy doing?
Sugar roll, baby.
Sugar roll. Please explain.
I will. So, I understand that the sugar roll alcohol wash back and forth has been contentious for some time now. And I do not disagree that the expert opinion is that the alcohol wash is more accurate. That is true. But you don't always need 100% accuracy to know what you're working with. And you always have to consider, what are you sacrificing to get that accuracy? So there was another controversial opinion that came out during the COVID-19 pandemic, where there were some researchers who were saying PCR is more accurate. That doesn't mean you should use it. PCR is so accurate that it can pick up on tiny little bits of the virus after the virus itself has been destroyed, little bits and pieces of it that are still scattered around your body that your biochemical cleanup crew is constantly working on getting rid of. That stuff can then trigger those PCR tests and leave you with the impression that you still have an infectious COVID-19 situation going on when you actually don't. So, the most accurate isn't always the thing that you need to go with if there's a drawback that counteracts the importance of that accuracy. For me, there is a drawback to the way that we need to consistently gauge our honeybees' mite loads. We do so much research on Varroa mites that sometimes we're gauging their mite loads like maybe even more than once per week, and collecting mites from these different colonies. And so an alcohol wash would sacrifice 300 bees every time. And we do not want to do that when our colonies are growing. Sometimes we need to be able to conduct research on these bees, put them back into the colony, covered in sugar. And yes, they are a little jostled for the experience, having been shaken up and covered in particulate matter, but they get cleaned up and they survive the experience. And while there is some evidence that, they're a little bit worse for the wear, they survived the experience and seem to be just fine and able to continue their work. So if you are conducting infrequent alcohol washes, you're probably not going to do anything to your colony that's going to counteract the fact that that's the most accurate way to do it. But the thing is, the sugar shake is accurate enough that not sacrificing those bees in the process is one of the most important things for us as we consider which one we're going to choose.
I am so glad to hear that, because that's exactly what I was thinking, and so many people disagree with me, and I'm so glad to
You
hear
can
it
tell them
from
the
you.
doctor said it.
I'm gonna say Dr. Sammy says,
Mhm.
and he knows a lot more than I do and a lot more than you do. Eh,
He's your friendly neighborhood entomologist.
Show me your PhD and then we'll talk. But I figure if my test is off by 20 or 10 or whatever percent, it doesn't matter, because if I'm doing 300 bees, and even that is not exactly accurate, by the way,
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm using a little half a cup measuring cup, and I've got 10 or more mites in there, I know that's too many. I don't care if it's 10, 11, 20, 30,
There you go.
or 13 and a half. But
Exactly.
if I only see one,
Mhm.
okay, I'm in pretty good shape.
Exactly. And it's when you're at the lowest threshold that you really want to do a couple of sugar shakes to make sure that you can then average it in between. So we do 3 if something is at a fairly low threshold and we're trying to decide, are we at 2 mites per 100 bee or 3 mites per 100 bee? Because 3 mites per 100 bee is that treatment threshold. And when you're at lower numbers, that's when it matters the most. If you're starting to get up there in high numbers anyway, and you're already at like 5 mites per 100 bee in a sugar shake, treat. Honey, treat. Like, there's no reason to be like, oh, let me do an alcohol wash because it'll be more accurate. You already know. Like, this is not a circumstance where you always need to know the exact number. You just need to know if it's above or below a specific number.
Couple other quick things. I know your time is limited today. Do you have any great advice for new beekeepers?
Oh my gosh, yes. I have some great advice for new beekeepers. So learn from people who have been doing this longer than you have. So I'll use my dad as an example. I love my dad so much. He is one of the coolest beekeepers that I know. He is also someone who, because he just doesn't really like crowds very much, he doesn't like to go to the beekeeping meetings. And the difficult part there that he's recognized is that in a lot of these meetings, they end up telling you things that are going on in their colonies that can be so helpful for you in recognizing what's going on in your own colony. If you know people whose colonies are collapsing because of Varroa, you really need to be paying attention to your own. They live near you. And when those colonies collapse, those bees are going to try their absolute darndest to find another place to live out their usefulness for the rest of their lives. And unfortunately, they will take with them sinister hitchhikers that could collapse your colony. And if you're not paying attention and you think, oh, I treated my colony a month ago, there's no way it's above threshold. If you're not paying attention to the fact that other people's colonies around you were above threshold and collapsed, and you've got mite immigration coming in that's causing problems, then you might miss it. And a lot of problems can happen as a result of that. So I always tell beekeepers when you're getting started, and even when you've been doing this for a long time, the advice and information that's provided by other beekeepers is invaluable. It is a team sport, and trying to go it alone will always be to your detriment. I also think that it is really, really useful as a beekeeper for you to also consider where you're getting your information from as it pertains to, new management practices or treatment practices and so on, because not all information is created equal. There's a lot of weird TikTok, Instagram, Facebook thrives on moving information forward regardless of its veracity. And so I have seen beekeepers that one of the most egregious ones was beekeepers who were replacing the cartridges from bedbug foggers and roach foggers with, I think it was, oxalic acid. Yeah. And it's not a good idea. That is not what that system is designed for, and can even result in some very flammable situations where you're shooting fire into your colony, which will kill the mites. It will definitely kill the mites, but the colony itself is also not going to make it. So these are the kinds of things where I like for people to recognize the importance of working with other beekeepers. But my mom always says, in a multitude of counselors, there is safety. in listening to a variety of different people and understanding, okay, I'm only hearing this from one person and I'm hearing a lot of other people saying like, oh no, that's a terrible idea. It might be worthwhile for me to investigate this idea a bit more firmly before I jump into trying this myself.
And if I can just add to that, most beekeepers are really friendly and really want to help you.
Hmm.
They're not going, "Oh, there's a new beekeeper. I'm gonna give him some bad advice and he'll quit," you know? No, most of them really wanna help.
Yes, for sure.
Last thing, my favorite part, I'm gonna ask you, Dr. Sammy, do you have a wild and crazy beekeeping story you can share with us?
Oh my goodness. I don't even have to think about that. I don't even have to think about that. I definitely have a wild and crazy beekeeping story for you. It's my go-to when I think about the crazy things that can go on when you're beekeeping and you're new to it. When I was a new beekeeper, I was starting in Dennis Van Ingelsdorp's lab at the University of Maryland, and everybody in that lab was bigger than me. I am a sleight of frame human being, and there were no extra small bee suits. So I was, going around in the shared bee suits of the lab, all of which were large. And so, I'm wearing a large bee suit, and it kind of defeats the purpose when your bee suit is basically a tent that's open at the bottom. And I felt this tingle on my ear. And some of you will know that back in those days, I had pretty long hair. And I was thinking, oh, my hair is just gotten to this length. It's probably just my hair brushing up against my ear because that was a part of getting used to having longer hair. But then I felt something inside of my ear moving, and I kind of freaked out a bit and realized there is a bee that has fully crawled into my ear canal. This is not good. It was able to walk right up my pants into my bee suit because it was so large and just walk right up and into my ear. And then I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? This bee is never going to leave. It's got everything it wants in there. It's got wax. It's about the same size as a cell. And it's, dark in there. It's probably really enjoying this dark, warm, waxy space. And so I could feel it moving around inside of my head, just feng shui in my earwax. Every time it moved, I could hear it inside. I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. I tried to flush it out with water at a water fountain. Don't do that, everybody. If ever this happens to you, the water will make it go farther inside to get away from the water. That didn't work. Smoke, exact same situation. The smoker did not help. So I went to the hospital. I had an undergraduate drive me to the hospital. And at the hospital, the people were not taking me seriously when I said I have a bee inside of my head. They're like, yeah, no, listen to me. I have a bee inside of my head, and I need it to not be inside of my head. They, saw me flailing around with my hive tool and such, and we're like, oh no, this is probably real. So they take me back. This doctor says, don't worry, I can see it. She's shining a light in my ear. I've got some forceps. I'm going to grab it. And I very forcefully said, you will not do that. You will definitely not do that. They have a sting reflex. If you grab it by its leg, it's going to avert that stinger. I am a vocalist. I do not want perforation of my eardrums. Do not grab it. And she says, okay, well then what do you want me to do? Do you have those bulbs that you use to get stuff out of a baby's ear? If you could get that and fill it with some kind of oil, mineral oil, any kind of oil, and then squirt that into my ear, maybe we can slide the bee out. And lo and behold, she was able to squirt some mineral oil into my ear. The bee slid right out after 2 squirts, and it had deformed wing virus and looked like a really sad little bee, and it lived out the rest of its life on my desk, and I named her Beyonce.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I'm not sure what we should learn from that, whether it's keep some
Wear bee suits that fit.
I actually like them a little bit big. You're less likely to get stung through your arms and stuff, but it's the opening at the bottom that was the problem for you.
That's the problem. If you're going to wear a big bee suit, then wear a belt, cinch that sucker, but don't just leave it open at the bottom.
Well, you don't want them climbing up your pant leg either.
No.
We won't. That'd be a more embarrassing emergency room visit. So, no, but seriously, someone could just take mineral oil and pour a little in their ear, and that would probably do it.
Yeah, you want to use a little force with it. You want that bulb that can squeeze the mineral oil in because you got to flush the bee out. But yeah, it works great because they can't maintain adequate purchase to keep walking around. They kind of slide, and so they slide right out of your ear.
I was thinking you were going to say some kind of little teeny vacuum.
That
to suck it
I think I
out.
would have enjoyed that sensation very much, but yeah, that might have been helpful.
Yeah. Anyway, hey, Dr. Sammy Ramsey, I appreciate your time so much. Thank you for being with us.
Of
And
course.
if anybody has not seen Secrets of the Bees yet,
Check it out. It's amazing. It is the #1 streamed thing on the Disney platform right now, which is huge because there's a lot of incredible content there. And that is just such an amazing review of my documentary, is to just see that so many people are loving it. So don't be left out. Check this thing out.
and listen for his singing.
Yeah, definitely. In both episodes, you can hear me singing.
Thanks again for joining us on Bee Love Beekeeping, presented by Man Lake. Another big thank you goes to Vita Bee Health for their support. Vita's Varroa control range of products includes Apistan, Epigard, and now Varoxan, extended release oxalic acid strips. Hey, thanks a lot, guys. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to and follow the show, tell your friends about it, and click on over to beelovebeekeeping.com to sign up for our free newsletter. If you have a guest suggestion or topic you'd like discussed on the show, shoot me an email, eric@beelovebeekeeping.com. And remember, if you're not just in it for the honey or the money, you're in it for the love. See you next week.